I was able to save my first $1 million in 8 years. And it all came down to following just one simple rule. And no, it wasn't from dropping all of my cash into lottery tickets. But in order to get there, I had to break most all other wealth building rules that are out there. And I also made a few major investment mistakes that I'm going to be sharing later on. I'm going to break down exactly the steps that I took to reach my first million, how I managed my salary and my debt, and how I took tactical steps to come out way ahead during a recession. This is going to be the exact roadmap on how I retired after working for only 15 years. And I need to state that the strategy that I used, honestly, is one that anyone can do. Seriously, if you have a job, you can do this too. I didn't have any handouts and nobody helped me along the way, which I'm guessing that's the position most of you are in. And of course, for your situation, you'll have to create a roadmap that's right for you. Now, most of us have been given the budgeting advice of the 50-30-20 rule, which absolutely does not work for me. And if you want to earn your first million in less than 10 years, then it probably won't work for you either. And I will explain why. But if you're not familiar with this rule, it states that 50% of your income should go towards your needs, like rent, food, and utility bills. Then 30% goes towards your wants, like eating out, vacations, and your hobbies. And the last portion is the 20% that goes towards your savings. If you want to be average, then definitely follow the 50-30-20 rule. But I have to warn you, average isn't looking so good. Because when we look at the average retirement account by age, it isn't anywhere close to $1 million, and that could be a serious problem. Because if you retire at 65 with only $426,000, it won't go very far when you consider that the expected average total insurance cost for a retired couple is estimated at $315,000. So you're probably wondering, Brian, if you didn't follow the 50-30-20 rule, then what rule did you follow? And in order to answer that, I need to give you a little bit more context. You see, my first job out of college, I was financially stupid. And in 2005, there weren't any YouTube videos to learn from. I had to rely on the word of mouth. But thankfully, I had an amazing boss that was a financial rock star. His advice to me was very simple. He told me not to fixate on wanting some pie-in-the-sky retirement number like $1 million. And if that is all that you think about without having any short-term goals along the way, then it's going to seem completely impossible to do, and it's way too easy to just give up. Instead, he told me to focus all of my energy to save and invest $100,000 as fast as possible. Do that before you buy a new car or a house or anything that's going to put you into debt. Because $100,000 invested takes 30 years of compounding interest to reach $1 million on its own at an 8% growth rate. And since I graduated at the late age of 30, I felt like I was way behind everyone else when it came to saving for retirement. I needed to save $100,000 within 5 years to make certain that I had at least $1 million plus by the time I was 65. And that was my short-term goal that I needed to reach. It was very tangible and it was very achievable. But of course, being the overachiever that I am, I wanted to hit that $100,000 in at least half that time. And that's how I coined my short-term strategy as being focused 100% of the time on making that $100,000, or the focused 100-100 rule, which made for a very nice title at the top of my spreadsheet. Now at the time, I didn't realize that my boss's advice of saving $100,000 would later become a famous quote from the billionaire Charlie Munger, where he puts it in a few blunt, colorful words that it isn't so easy to do. But in order to build meaningful wealth, you need $100,000 to create that proverbial snowball effect of compounding growth. And I realize there are several different videos on this similar topic, but mine is very different because I've actually lived it and I can give actual examples along with some of my mistakes. Like, don't give that $20 to the guy in Puerto Rico that claims he was recently robbed. True story. And then we saw the same guy 2 years later with the same exact made-up story. In this case, I literally would have been better off playing the lottery. Now, seeing as how I retired in my 40s, I'm going to walk through a very detailed example of what I did, along with a couple of the mistakes that you definitely don't want to make. These are all steps that any of you can take at most any age. Case in point, I didn't even start until I was 30. To get started, my first job coming out of college, I had a salary of $65,000. So we'll use that as an example with today's rates and the 401k options. Now, just as I had started my job, I had this focused mentality on hitting $100,000. And I created 4 different steps to get me started. And that first step was to contribute to my 401k match up to the amount that my employer also matches, which at the time happened to be 4%. I only did up to the match amount because it was free money that is 100% return on what I put in, plus it all compounds and grows together. And my second point was to create a budget. And I always feel like that is a dirty word when I mention it to people and they begin to roll their eyes back. But it is a necessary evil. If you're going to have a short-term strategy, you need to be able to have a plan and you need to know where you stand first. To keep it simple, I tracked all of my expenses and then I tried to classify them with my needs versus my wants. And my third step was to pay off any high debt, like that credit card that was sitting with a 20% interest rate, and I did that as aggressively as I could. Like a dog with a new chew toy, I wouldn't let go until that balance was reduced to tiny shreds on the carpet. And my fourth rule was to put more time into my hobbies that didn't cost very much, like going out into the foothills for mountain biking, hit my favorite whitewater rafting spot on the Cabarton, or knitting a new winter hat to match my jacket. Okay, that was definitely 2 truths and a lie, but I'm honestly scared to see what you put in the comments. Now, if we fast forward 6 months, my credit card debt was completely paid off, and then I would begin to max out my 401k, which in today's terms, that would be $23,000 a year. And in doing so, it drops the taxes down nearly in half, and that gives back an extra $3,000 a year. Now, this is the spot where I made my first major mistake. And that mistake was that my employer had a $1,000 match on their HSA or their health savings account, and I didn't take advantage of it. And similar to the 401k, the HSA is free money that you always take advantage of. But once again, I was young, I was stupid, and I thought that I was healthy and I would never need those funds. Not knowing that the HSA funds can be invested in the stock market and growing just like a 401k. An underrated area of investing is into a business of your own, where a standalone business can generate anywhere from 8 to 10% return on capital each month, which is about 100% return a year. That's where today's sponsor, Limits Express, comes into play. They work as business managers to create and manage an Amazon store just for you, where they buy and sell national branded products using your capital and business. They do all the work, and you just share in the profits together each and every month. I have gone ahead and I have invested with them to verify the process. And in my first month of starting, I had over $4,000 in sales at a 14% return. I admit that it starts very slow because of the brand approval process with Amazon. So this month, I expect my sales to triple. So if you're interested in learning more, I'll have a link down in the description so that you can speak directly with Kyle, one of their co-founders. You can also check out their website in the links below. And yes, you can take funds out of an HSA tax-free if they're used for medical bills. But get this, it doesn't matter when the medical bills occurred. You could literally sit on your HSA for 20 years, letting it grow, and then you could pay off a medical bill from 10 years prior, so long as you have the receipt. And if you're over the age of 65, you can withdraw HSA funds for any reason you want, not just medical, and you won't have any penalty tied to it. But of course, you will have to pay taxes on what you've earned. So in essence, it is a great retirement account or a completely tax-free method to pay medical bills. And for this reason, you definitely want to contribute to it if it's free money. And just like that con artist down in Puerto Rico, never turn down free money. My second family is Puerto Rican, so nothing but love for all my friends in PR. Now, as for my investments, being motivated to hit my $100,000 goal faster than 5 years, I knew the only way to speed up the process was to earn more money. So I took on an additional side hustle, where I was now doing photography on the side, in addition to being in the Air National Guard. This extra work brought in an extra $1,000 a month for me. The other step to increase my salary was to take on additional responsibilities at my day job. And no, it didn't pay off right away, but after 2 years from graduating, I was promoted with about a 30% increase in my salary. But if you're doing the math on the timeline, then you also realize that the Great Recession of 2008 was just about to happen.
I think this is the most significant financial crisis in the post-war period.
The job market is in complete disarray.
Because we're now down 43%. It's so horrible.
And because I was hyper-focused on saving $100,000, I began learning as much as I could about investing and how the markets worked. And leading up to the recession, there were tons of indicators and professionals that were telling us that a recession was knocking at the door, just like a couple of Mormon missionaries wanting to have a simple conversation. But instead, you hide behind the couch and you pretend you can't even hear them. But of course, I'm that guy that answered the door because I was able to hit my $100,000 goal in just over 2 years, and I didn't want to lose it. So I took a calculated risk where I moved 90% of my 401k from growth funds to stable bonds. Bonds were only making like 3 or 4% at the time, but I would rather ease the brakes on that 10% growth to ensure that I didn't lose any of my money. I'm okay losing 6% difference from that shift, but I wasn't okay losing 40 or 50% if the market took a major tank. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. My money was safe and still earning interest while my peers lost half of their retirement accounts. And this happened to be one of the smartest moves that I have ever made with my money. I learned that actively managing my money and being defensive can be priceless. I weighed the risks and I took a short-term conservative approach that paid off in a very big way. And I speak to many of those tactical moves and the investments in other videos to safeguard your cash in your 401ks when the market has uncertainty. Now you should be questioning, how was I able to turn 100,000 into $1 million so quickly? And honestly, it all came down to the learnings that I gained from trying to save up that 100,000 so quickly. Since I was earning more from my career, I refused to fall victim to lifestyle creep. I didn't need to have a brand new car or a fancy house to prove to everyone else that I had found financial success. Even now, I drive a Ford truck that's over 8 years old, and I guarantee you I'm going to drive that thing into the ground. As for hitting the $1 million, I capitalized on the recession and I was able to buy a ton of growth stock at the bottom. And my 401k doubled in about a year's time because of all of the growth along with my contributions. Now, later on, I did take on debt of a truck and I did buy a house, but I waited to do those things until after I hit my first $100,000. Now, after about 4 years into my investment journey, I had over $300,000 saved up. I was almost 1/3 of the way to $1 million. And I try to share all of this because, like I said, I started at 31. I didn't really start with much except for debt, which I'm guessing a lot of you are in that same situation. From here, I did recognize that the best option to increase the savings in my investments was to simply make more money. And I did create my strategy very early on to either get promoted or move to another position every 2 years. Now, I'm not recommending that a person job hop companies every 2 years, but I do recommend changing roles every 2 years. Even though I was moving from, let's say, merchandising to marketing or HR to IT all within the same company, every time I changed roles within that company, they would give me a bump in pay anywhere from 5 to 15%. Which was a heck of a lot more than the COLA they gave every year at 2 to 3%. And of course, because my 401k match is a percentage of my salary, it all goes up together. But I will also share that I worked for 3 different companies within my career, and the 2 times that I switched companies completely, they gave me an increase in my salary between 40 to 100%. And I hate to say it, but companies value outside applicants a heck of a lot more than they do their internal employees, and they're willing to pay a lot more for it. When it was all said and done, I hit my first $1 million in 8 years. And I think that there's some of you out there that can do that even faster than I did. For me, success came from focusing 100% of my energy into that first $100,000. I did that by living within a budget, paying off my high interest debt first while matching my 401k. Then I maxed out my 401k, and I honestly should have done that with my HSA too. Once all of my tax advantaged accounts were maxed, I then invested into stocks and ETFs in a taxable account. I also increased my top line revenue with side hustles, getting promoted, and also changing jobs. And from a defensive stance, I made strategic decisions to use short-term tactics to safeguard my funds during market downturns. I also stayed vigilant in not falling prey to lifestyle creep, which I think that's the challenge that most of us have. For me, investing is about leveraging both the offensive and the defensive strategies to win in the long game. For me, creating that simple, focused 100-100 rule, I learned the value of money. I had completely changed my approach towards saving and investing. I had created habits and rules that made saving and building wealth a sustainable part of my life. I guarantee you that if you make your focus to hit $100,000 as quickly as possible, you will create new habits, and you will also educate yourself on the best ways to invest both your time and your money. And if you're looking for a couple of great offensive and defensive investments, I do have 2 options listed right here in these 2 videos. Thank you so much for watching.